there is a common misconception in how mass market products are produced, and that is that once you find the defining qualities that are attractive about a certain thing, you stick to that, and you stick to it to death. I mean, till it doesn't work anymore and you find the next thing to stick to. And it's this adhesive approach to art that kills a lot of genuinely skilled and inspiring artists. In other words, there are people who have the qualities that it takes to really forge a singular path for themselves as artists. But what they will often do is subject themselves to fitting to a criteria that is so painstakingly banal and regular and regimented and, quite frankly, typical, that they will mire down into just another duplicate of something that is familiar enough for them to still catch wind. Shane Eagle is one of those artists. As a rapper, Shane theoretically has what it takes. I mean, we've seen him rise from the reality TV show, get his rejections, emerge as a kind of a niche artist who capitalized on the yet lacking structure of lyricism, which could have global appeal yet still stick into the format of what Gen Xers are into. But I think that above and beyond that, Shane is an artist who either, one, suffers from an identity crisis, and I'll get into how, or two, suffers from the fact that much of his identity is based on things that are mass produced. He looks like a lot of rappers, sounds like a lot of rappers, approaches his albums and his schemes and his pockets and his bars, his beat selection. Everything about Shane feels like it has been done by a lot of people, and it continuously is. As a result, if I could boil down the one reason why Shane Eagle's career doesn't seem to be on par with his peers, many who have surpassed him in ways that are wide apart and yet do not have much of the talent that he does, is that Shane is just too damn typical. He's too regular. He's too much of a normie. And when I say normie, he has consciously or unconsciously packaged himself through an approach that just doesn't distill his thoughts and his ideas, and most importantly his character, beyond some kind of mass-produced product. And I think Akira is a living, breathing testament of everything that is wrong with Shane Eagle's approach. One, the concept is said to have been inspired by Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame, and the album art itself and many of the kind of press run graphics lended themselves to this kind of magical anime style, which is, prowling, elusive hero who emerges from this Japanese inspired folkloric world. But what the fuck does that have to do with anything, really? This project itself is anchored on a pop culture idea that doesn't really cement itself thematically in the project. It's like Shane Eagle chooses cool things by their sheer popularity. The things he says are the things that he knows people catch on to easily and say the most. The way he approaches his music is really based on this barometer of populism. And there's not a lot of off-kilter, interesting things about Shane. There isn't a single thing you can point at and go, nobody else does this. Nobody else approaches something like this. So in Akira, even in songs that really could have been a shining beacon because of the production, like even the way it opens up with the intro, soul sample, dusty drums, it's like a beautiful crossover of this now Griselda-esque tone to rap with Shane's easygoing, you know, quite charismatic flow. But it's the fact that he raps and approaches his style in a way that most niggas do. And it's not really anchored on anything distinctly personal or uniquely individuated that gives the listener an idea of where Shane is emotionally, mentally, spiritually as a dude, how he feels about the conflicts of where he is in terms of his spot as a South African rapper, and just how to really navigate who we are listening to. Shane veils his distinct original path because all of us have one. All of us have a story that is like none other, while still having similarities with other people. But Shane doesn't use his uniqueness as his strength. He leans on the similarities. He leans on the fact that he's an artist you could easily hear on a Dreamville roster. He leans on the fact that you could put him next to Jack Harlow or Drake. He leans on the fact that he has this effortless, easy global appeal because he's light-skinned, he's able to switch up his accent in a way that you can't even smell the South Africa. He's able to kind of navigate a world where he could pass off as another African American kid rapping, but he's not. He's South African. He's from Rabi Ridge. One of the most interesting things that I've ever really come across in Shane is not even in the music. Ebro once did a little mini docu-series about South African music, and there's a scene where he walks with Shane through his hood. And right as Shane is kind of narrating his life to Ebro, one dude calls out, "Exe Shane," and in that moment, Shane responds, "Sharp Keenan." He reverts back to a quote-unquote colored accent, and then he presumes to wear the whole Afro-American slang back when he dialogues with Ebro. And it's in that moment where I felt that's the problem, Shane. See that double consciousness where you feel you need to switch up your accent in a way and speak about certain things and rap in a certain way that just really is closer to the aspirational quality of what you think rap is there to get you to. But you do this at the expense of Rabi Ridge. At the expense of the Rabi Ridge-ness that is evidently there. I mean, I'm not asking for Shane to switch over and be youngster CBT. I'm not even really asking him to switch up his accent necessarily. I'm asking him to understand that there is nothing in his music which speaks of his distinct identity as an African, a South African, a kid from Rabi Ridge, somebody who's trying to navigate what is now a global phenomenon of rap as somebody from a continent that the rest of the world views as backwards. You don't have to be overtly political to address politics. It's an inherent part of the life. It's about authenticity, tapping into the stories that are truly yours and rendering them in a way that doesn't feel like some kind of copy. So as a result, sonically here, there is essentially nothing I could pointedly say is an error. It just all is brought down by the fact that Shane does not push himself beyond the typical. He drowns in the generic, and as a result, even tracks like number 11, Over Easy, he kind of like hones into a chilled narrative that's really his strength. I think he's stronger when he's telling a story, but the stories he's telling are just floating in a place where they have no located uniqueness about them. So I know you're waiting for the ultimate verdict, because previously, the last time we reviewed Shane Eagle, it wasn't glowing. And it came from this very same disgruntled effect I get after listening to his music, because one of the things that grates me the most is seeing real, creative, genuinely talented artists subject their creativity to mass production typicality. Like I said, the problems are not with the sonic texture of this project. I mean, it starts off on a laid back tip that kind of opens up a conversational tone about it. The samples are breathtakingly fresh. The approach happens in a way that is just so easy to digest, because it fits neatly into the context of a lot of the trends that are happening in rap right now. And then across the halfway mark, it speeds up and goes into a kind of a trap direction, and it has this overall hazy high about it. It feels like a dreamy world that Shane is navigating to, but again, he codes himself and says things and raps in a way that just doesn't push to make it starkly fascinating. So I want to talk directly to Shane. My scathing critiques of you as an artist come from love. I mean, my scathing critiques of everybody come from love, but particularly Shane. I really like who he could be as a rapper, but he's held back by who he thinks he needs to be. And the issue of who he thinks he needs to be is something we address a lot on this channel. It has to do with the fact that a lot of young African rappers think that mimicking the States through their movement, culture, and whole... I mean, yes, we live in a world that's juxtaposed in a lot of variety of influences. Be that. But be proud of the unique things that Americans could never possibly know, because you are African. And I know you know, none of that comes across. You had an opportunity on the song African Poetry, which just sounds like another African American talking about these romantic primal ideas of what Africa is about. And I'm really disappointed that an African raps thematically about Africa in a way that sounds so romantic, when we know the reality of Africa is more and is desperately in a state of emergency. And for an artist to be mute in times like these about that issue, and not in a way where you gotta speak out about it, but even AKA ooze the sense of subconscious political awareness through his referencing. And it is the issue that Shane sources his whole referencing, which is a huge part of rap, from a world that he doesn't seem to inhabit personally. So ultimately, I give this project a 4 out of 10, because the makings of a superstar are there. And it feels like a lot of the ingredients are there through his team, whoever's producing for him, but there's a misconstrued idea of what it should take to cross over. And it's this idea that's keeping him in this box. The box of the typical. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother, and you're watching the most poignant culture podcast in the fucking continent. This is what we do. Please subscribe if you already haven't. We do things like this. We talk about interesting and the uninteresting, but everything that's constantly happening right now. Firstly on the continent, sometimes globally as a whole. We just address the culture of where we are as a people in relation to capitalism, pop culture, mass market media, and how that really affects us. These reviews are an extension of that. The music we listen to carries our lives. It's a soundtrack. So if you like tidbits about what we're going through and analysis of we as a people, this is the channel for you. Much love.